Hello everyone, Earl Henderson, Primordial Defense. Thank you for watching. I have another Monday quarterback video for you. I'm going to play this video and talk about things that are going on, to better explain what's going on, and talk about things that I think that are being done right and are done wrong. Here we go.
Welcome this afternoon. We are here consistent with our policy to release the body-worn camera package and have a press conference on our officer-involved shooting in Mount Vernon on May 11th. Maybe that'll help. There you go. All right, we will show you the video in full as we often do, and then Chief Davis will come out for some remarks.
On May 11th, an officer assigned to the Mount Vernon Police District was alerted to a stolen vehicle that passed a license plate reader near the 6300 block of Richmond Highway. The officer began searching the area and saw the stolen U-Haul enter a gas station parking lot. The officer attempted to detain the driver of the stolen U-Haul to further the investigation. The following is surveillance footage from the gas station parking lot.
Okay, so as you can see, this video from the source is 42 minutes long. That's a pretty long video. So I normally have been trying to play the video and then go back and talk about things. I'm not going to be able to do that with this video since the original video is almost an hour long. So I'll have to pause here and there to talk about things as we go along. So the first thing I want to talk about is the license plate reader. That's pretty cool technology. So these license plate cameras can be mounted to vehicles. So the patrol car could have the license plate readers mounted to it on the trunk, up on the roof of the vehicle. Usually there's obviously more than one to be able to capture different angles. Or they could be stationary. They could be put on light poles, utility poles, etc. The cameras are linked to a system, and they are continuously taking photographs. Like anytime a license plate enters the frame, it's detected and pictures taken, detecting it through the software, and it cross-references the numbers it recognizes to a known data sheet. So anytime a vehicle is listed as stolen in a particular area, of course, number one, it gets entered in NCIC, and then it can be entered into this camera system from there. And whenever you got 1,000 cars driving past this camera, it's going snap, 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 and it's running all those numbers and letters through the system. Nothing comes back, nothing comes back, nothing comes back, and then boom, the tag associated with the stolen vehicle, click, it recognizes it, and it'll send an alert. Pretty cool technology. Here in Kentucky, we recently had a sheriff's deputy killed in the line of duty. He went to make a traffic stop on a piece of shit that should have been in prison, and he got shot. And that dude took off. He went to some person's house, robbed them at gunpoint, stole their vehicle, and then drove to Lexington. They were able to use their flock camera systems up there to detect this vehicle, really the license plate, and narrow down that he was in this area, etc. And then boom, went to go get him. Had it not been for that, it could have been a little bit longer of a process to find this guy and where he was at, or it may not have been possible to find him at all. So these cameras are, like I said, that's not just the cameras, it's the whole system. It's pretty neat. There's some people who say it's an intrusion of privacy, the police shouldn't have this technology, etc. I don't see a problem with it. Your license plate is out in a public area anyway. everybody can see it. Who gives a shit? I don't. I have no problem with systems like this being set up. It is able to very quickly and efficiently detect the presence of stolen vehicles, or rather the license plates, driving by. All right, so he's detected, or this alert has come out, and he's noticed this vehicle, and he's pulling in to get to him. I'll play it, and then we'll go from there. So there's no audio with this. It's just surveillance footage. Okay, so let's back up and talk about what we've seen so far. All right, so he's detected this vehicle and is pulling in to do work. So it seems like from the description that he got this alert and then he very promptly went to go investigate. A stolen vehicle, that is a high risk stop. And with that, there's certain things that need to be going with a high risk stop. You need to have more people. This is a pretty big truck. It's pretty noticeable. He could have very easily waited a little bit further back, called in the cavalry, had everyone en route to this position, and then go forward and make contact. With something as high risk as this, numbers are what count. Multiple people is what makes a difference in your success rate. So it would have been better if he had just waited for other people to get there and then go make contact with this person. Instead, it looks like he just very quickly said, oh, stolen vehicle alert, U-Haul. Oh, there's that big thing. Whoop, whip in there, get out. Let's go get him. Not the greatest tactic. Has it worked for him before? Probably. He's probably done it before. He's probably heard others do it before. Fortuitous outcomes reinforce bad tactics. Fortuitous outcomes reinforce bad tactics. Just because you got lucky doing it once before doesn't mean it's the right way of doing it. Just because you took a girl home from the bar and banged her without a condom and you didn't catch anything, it doesn't mean that was the right thing to do. You just got lucky. Fortuitous outcomes reinforce bad tactics. He should have waited for more people to get there. Now watch him as he's getting out. He's noticing this car. He's looking at it. I'm going to play it cool. I'm going to keep walking up, watching him out the corner of my eye. Ah, shit. Keep going. You see the officer pulling his cuffs out. Now here in a second, you'll see the body cam footage. This guy's like, what are you talking about? What do you mean stolen car? Blah, 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 blah. He's being deceptive. The officer gets one cuff on, and as this guy's, I wouldn't say bucking up, but he's not being fully cooperative. He's like, what are you talking about? What was stolen vehicle? Blah, 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 blah. Officer gets one cuff on and then starts talking on the radio. And you'll see that his head is turned. So this is pretty normal for officers who have their microphones mounted to one of their shoulder epaulets. So he's got his mounted to the left. And so when you see a person turning their head to the microphone, they're just putting their mouth closer to the microphone. That way their transmission is a lot more clear. It's not as I wouldn't say garbled sounding, but it's just very more clear and concise. You can still keep your head straight, press that button and talk. It's still going to pick you up. No issue. But it's a force of habit. People, turn your head, speak into the microphone, maybe even like tweak your shoulder and do like a shoulder shrug and move that microphone closer to your face. It's just a normal habit, especially like on a windy day or something, or there's a bunch of background noise. You just put your mouth as close to that microphone as possible. So he's just doing a normal thing, but that means that he's only got part of this guy in his peripheral vision at this point. His left eye, I don't think, is capturing anything about this guy, what's going on. It's just his right eye, and it's in his peripheral. So as he's talking, watch the bad guy. Let me back it up. Watch it. Boom. He looks down at the gun. This is target glancing. He's telegraphing what he's thinking about. Had this officer been watching him, he could have detected that. So this guy, anytime someone looks down at the gun, they're thinking about taking it, or they're assessing whether or not they think you would be fast enough to be able to get it out and use it on them. A lot of times it's them thinking about going for the gun. Just like a person who's about to run, they'll look for their avenue of escape. They'll look for that path they want to take and make sure it's clear. A person's eyes are like the windows to their soul. A person's eyes can tell you a lot about what they're thinking, who they are, etc. This guy telegraphed hard. He might as well have had a billboard on his hat saying, "I'm thinking about taking your gun." And then boom, he goes for it. So he goes into a weapon retention move. He starts to press down on the guy's hand to keep the gun pressed down in. He's just keeping it pressed in to keep that gun from coming out. Now, the holster itself, I'm pretty sure it's a Safariland holster. Can't see in detail what it is, but pretty sure that's what it is. That's pretty much what everyone is using. But not everyone, but a lot. This is where quality gear comes into play. Had this been some other inferior holster, it is very possible, very likely, that the gun could have been taken out of the holster, or the holster could have been sheared off the belt and then the whole holster and gun taken away. So Safariland makes some very great products. Their holsters are the gold standard for duty grade holsters. There's a video out there floating around, a guy doing pull-ups from a Safariland holster. It's on a duty belt. They put the duty belt rig up on a higher point, and this dude grabs hold of the gun and holster, and he's doing pull-ups off the damn thing. That's a damn good holster. There's some other holsters that you could not do that with. You grab hold of that thing in a pull-up position and get your feet off the ground, snap, it's broken. So you've got to have quality gear. A lot of agencies, they provide equipment, but you'd be surprised about how many agencies out there don't provide equipment. You'd be surprised about how many officers working right now had to buy their own equipment. And when you're forced to buy your own equipment, yeah, the shit adds up. It gets expensive. A Safariland holster, brand new, is like somewhere between $150, $200. It's not cheap at all. And then all your duty gear and all that crap that goes along with it. Yeah, it can be it could be an investment. It's a capital expenditure. I mean, it's quite a bit of money to equip one person with just their gear alone, not counting the vehicle and all this other accessory crap, like just the way he's dressed right now. Few $1,000s right there, just what he's wearing. So when people have to buy their own stuff, sometimes they skimp, sometimes they go for the cheaper price things, and a holster is life safety equipment. If you was going to go mountain climbing, would you want the cheap rope or would you want the life-rated expensive rope? That's a no-brainer. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to me like that's a no-brainer for people in the law enforcement and security industries. They look at some of these cheaper holsters and they're like, oh, it's just as good. But they're not. They're not as good. And they have fortuitous outcomes where they don't get involved in shit, nothing happens, and that reinforces bad decisions. So get quality gear to save your life. Now, this also can bring up the topic of a edged weapon on the duty belt. So there's a lot of people who will carry an edged weapon on their duty belt just for this purpose. Something like a K-bar, TDI, some other type of small edged weapon that is usually mounted behind the magazine pouch or somewhere on your support side. And the idea is that someone goes to do a gun grab. Of course, your right hand smashes down on it, pressing inward, pressing down, keeping them from pulling it out. And then your left hand reaches down, or your support side reaches down You whip that knife out, and then you can either reach across and just slash across their arm or arms on the underside of their forearms. Just press and slash hard, dig in, cut those tendons, or start poking them. Start poking them in the face, the neck, wherever, and stab them off of you. I used to carry a TDI. I stopped carrying it because I got into a fight once and rolling around on the ground with someone, and the damn thing fell out. And I didn't know it at the time, but it fell out after the fight was all done. Of course, anytime I have to fight with someone, I've always done a self pat down, make sure I'm not bleeding or I'm not missing anything. And during this self pat down and checking myself, I noticed my knife was gone. I said, "Oh shit, where'd my knife go?" And look around in the area that we were rolling around on the ground at, and boom, there it is, laying right there on the ground. So it was after that point that kind of worried me, and it made me realize that, hey, this knife could very easily come out, and it could be very easily used against me. So I stopped carrying it pretty much after that point. If there was any company that would make a very sturdy holster for it that had some retention capability, I would probably start carrying it again, but nothing like that exists to my knowledge. And if you've ever been to Craig Douglas ECQC courses, or you watch any videos of these, you'll see people, they'll have their training knives on them. And of course, they got the blue gun on them during the evolutions, and then if they have a training knife like the one that they carry, they'll have that on them. And during this fight, or some of these fights, you'll see the person they're fighting, they actually take that knife off that person and then simulate stabbing them with their own knife. It happens quite a bit. And the reason is there's just no good retention for a knife. It's not like a holster for a gun where it can lock around something on it and make it extremely difficult to pull out. There's no notches or anything like that on a knife that allows it to lock in place. And I think that if someone were to come up with something like a K-bar TDI kind of knife that had like a groove or a notch in the blade that paired with a holster that had a locking mechanism built into it, where you had to do like a thumb activation thing to get it to unlock, I think that would probably be the cat's meow right there, and they make a whole lot of money selling those damn things. But had this officer had a knife, it's feasible that he could have pulled it and started slashing this guy's arms or stabbing him in the face and throat with that knife, get him off of him, and then go to his gun and get it out and point it at him and start giving him verbal commands to get down. If the dude didn't want to obey and wanted to come back at him, then he could have got a lead sandwich. But the knife is an option. It is an option. There's also some other physical stuff that could be going on here as far as trying to deal with this gun grab, locking this arm in place, doing I think it's called a Kimura. There's no way for me to very easily physically explain it, but there's a technique you can do to basically lock that person's arm in place, do a move, get that arm extended, and then do another move, and basically work towards aggressively ripping that arm out of its socket. But again, like I said, it's very difficult to explain those moves without doing some kind of demonstration. And I just don't have the setup to do a demonstration. I don't have another person here to to show that kind of stuff, and I don't think that I could do it any justice. Moving on. Now they get back to this car, and I at first wanted to say something about making sure your car is locked, but then of course it dawned on me that this guy is close to the vehicle, so the vehicle would have been recognizing his key fob, and when the door handle gets tried, it would have opened for them. I don't know. I'm guessing this is a Ford Explorer. Yeah, it looks like a Ford Explorer. I don't know if the Ford Explorers have the proximity system in it where you have the key fob in your pocket and then you just walk up to the door and you try the handle and it unlocks for you. I don't know if it does that, but if it does, then obviously him having locked the door beforehand at this point would not have mattered, because he's just so close to it that the car would recognize that the key fob's within close proximity, and then boom, it would open. But if it's an older technology, or quote-unquote dumber technology, where he'd have to press a button on the key fob to unlock the door, then that would have been the saving grace right there. And I always advocate locking your door every time you get out of the car. Even if you know you're just going to be going a couple feet over to somewhere, always get in the habit, as soon as that door closes, click, it gets locked. Especially if it's running. That way, it decreases the likelihood of someone getting in there. Can someone still get in there? Yeah, absolutely. Just break the window. But it helps decrease the likelihood of them doing it. Now, as I said, if this thing was able to detect proximity of the fob, it's going to unlock at that point anyway. So I don't know if this guy was thinking, well, I'll steal the car and go from there, or if he could see a rifle in the car and thought, oh, I can just get this rifle out. Don't know what's going through this guy's head. We can see some equipment laying on the ground here. This is a flashlight, I think. It has kind of a cylindrical shape to it. Could be a pistol mag. This right here, not sure what this is. This could be a wallet. At first I thought it was a body camera, but you'll see later on with his body camera footage, the body camera stays inside the vehicle. And I think there's a hat on the ground somewhere. So some stuff has fallen out at this point. This over here, like I said, don't know if it's a flashlight or a pistol mag, but it's coming out. If it's a pistol mag, that means that most likely the guy's using an open top pouch. This is one reason why I'm not a fan of open top pouches. It's just too easy for magazines to fall out or be knocked out. Magazine pouches need to have retention built into them in the shape or form of some type of material going over top of the magazine itself and lock it in place on the carrier, either with a snap button or Velcro, or even if it's a shock cord that goes over top of it.
The following is a simultaneous compilation of the body-worn camera footage from the 3 officers directly involved.
All right, so I'm going to go forward and skip through this 3 camera footages there. I hate when they put all 3 footage together, or all 4 footage, or 2 footage together. It just makes it very difficult to track what's going on and pay attention. So skip that, and then
McDonald's.
All right.
The following is body-worn camera footage shown individually as the assault on the officer unfolded.
What's on, brother? Hey, sir.
Can I get something?
Driving a U-Haul?
Yeah.
Yeah, can you talk to me real quick over here? Of course. Alright, we're gonna go right over here, man.
What did I do?
What?
I said, what did I do?
Alright, face right here. Alright? Right now you're being detained, okay? This report is stolen.
Why? Since when?
You're not in arrest right now, you're just being detained, okay?
What's report is stolen?
Alright. 221 Bravo, hold the channel, send me a unit to Sicko up here by North Walmart.
What the
Sir, you're good. Get off my gun. Sicko one! Sicko one! Sicko one! Go off my gun!
What report is stolen?
Sir, get off my gun! Sicko one! Sicko one! Just start on! Sicko one! Sir, you're not going to jail right now, right? Get off my gun.
No, you're gonna...
I'm not going to...
All units, we're going to call this signal 1, no response.
Look.
Get off my gun! Get off my gun! He's going for my gun! He's going for my gun!
Please just get back.
Get off my gun!
Is it? Just crashed into the Walmart.
Okay, so let's back this up to the first part where he's making contact with this guy.
Hey, can you talk to me real quick over here? Of course. Alright, we're gonna go right over for a minute.
What did I do?
What?
I said, what did I do?
Alright, face right here. Alright? Right now you're being detained, okay? This report is stolen.
Why? Since when?
You're not in arrest right now, you're just being detained, okay?
What's report is stolen?
Alright.
So I think it's possible that this officer was, what's the word I'm looking for? I would say this officer probably felt that this guy was kind of soft based off how he's talking, and the way he's dressed and the way his mannerisms are. He was misled into thinking that, you know, he's a sissy boy, and probably that had to play with how he let his guard down. Had this been a different person, let's say he was a little bit more manlier, say he talked a little bit rougher, he didn't have the soft voice, say he just looked hard, would this officer had approached him a little bit differently and regarded him a little bit differently? I would hope so. I would think so. I would hope that he would have not done what he did in this scenario right here, and that if had he acted different with the person that was acting different, then he should have. If he would have done that, then he should have done that to this person as well. Everyone gets treated the same. Just because they look soft, talk soft, doesn't mean they're actually soft.
Two-Time Bravo, hold the channel, send me a unit to Sicko up here. So
this dude is, you know, he's not being fully cooperative. He's kind of arguing a little bit, but he's not being super aggressive or anything like that. But it's enough for this officer to say, hey, hold the channel, send me a unit. So at this point, to me, it seems like this is the only time that he has really communicated that he's out doing something. When he first got out with the vehicle, well, number one, like I said earlier, he shouldn't have been doing this alone. He should have been holding back and waiting for someone else to get there. But it almost seems like when he first got out and started interacting with this dude, he hadn't called out exactly where he was at. So if things had popped off a lot sooner, this guy started attacking, would he have had the ability to even get on the radio and broadcast where he's at. There's a possibility he may not have. And he could have maybe just said, signal one, he's going for my gun. But then no one would have any idea where the hell he's at. So that's why it's imperative that you call out your location before you go out start doing stuff. That way, if something happens, people know where to go looking for you if you don't answer your radio, or if you make a very loud noise on your radio by talking, or you press the oh shit button. When something bad happens like that, boom, dispatch already knows where you're at, and the other people are like, where's he at? Dispatch says, oh, he's at such and such and such and such location. And then everybody knows to go there. But if you don't call out your fucking location, nobody knows where to go. Holding channel. So basically what that means is he wants everyone on the radio channel to shut up. Don't be talking. Don't be running tags, at a hotel or giving out a serial number and description of a stolen bicycle over the net. Like, don't be talking on this channel right now. Like, shut your ass up unless you're right here with me. Go to the backup channel.
North Walmart.
What the fuck?
Sir, you're good. Get off my gun. Signal one, go to my gun.
What's the report is doing?
Sir, get off my gun.
Sir, get off my gun.
Signal one, just start on us. Signal one. Sir, you're not going to jail right now, right? Get off my gun.
So I just don't think that the tone of voice and the way he's talking is sending the message to this guy. I think louder verbal commands need to be used. More aggressive tonnage needs to be utilized. Sir, get off my gun. Yeah, I'm not feeling it. Like, that's not making me feel intimidated in any way. I don't get to see this officer very well, like you can the suspect and the body camera. All we see from the officer is the security camera footage, and so I don't even know if the suspect was able to pick up on anything from his body language, his demeanor. But some people they're just not intimidating at all, and it's not like it's a jab at a personal attack or anything like that. That's just the fucking truth of the matter. Like, there's just some people that you look at and they're not intimidating. And then the complete opposite of that, there's just some people you look at, you can see them from across the way, not even interacting with them, not even talking to them, they're not even looking at you, but you can just look at someone at like Walmart or something like that. You just look at someone and be like, don't want to fuck with that guy. So it's possible that this officer was somewhere between the low end and the middle of that. And that gave the suspect the courage to do what he did. I do believe that there are quite a few officer-involved shootings out there that have occurred because the officer was not intimidating enough. The suspect thought, I'll take this bitch. Not all of them, but I think there are a lot of them out there that's why they started. And this is also why, I think that some agencies' hiring practices are pretty stupid, and some of their policies are pretty stupid, like no facial hair, no tattoos, and their practices of how they hire and everything. It's like they try their hardest to hire poodles and other like house dogs, little Boy Scouts, right? They hire them and expect them to go out and do the job of a German Shepherd. You can't take a fucking poodle or a labradoodle that has been in a house and spoiled his entire life and then put it in the junkyard with the pit bull. It's gonna fucking die. But that's how agencies do their hiring practices. They hire a lot of soft ass people, a bunch of yes sir people who will say yes sir, yes sir, yes sir, yes sir. People who don't ask questions, they don't buck up at anything, etc. That's great for the chief and the admin when they can tell people and never get any resistance. They can mold these people to the way they want them, etc. But in reality, it's not doing society any good because no one's taking them serious. Yeah. Command presence goes can take you pretty far, and it can, your the way you present yourself, the way you look, can deter a person from doing something. I'm not saying it will always will. Like I am fucking 6'8", and there have been still some people who thought they could go toe to toe with me.
Look. Get off my gun! Get off my gun! Let's go for my gun! Let's go for my gun!
Please just get back.
Get off my gun!
There's it!
Oops. So now here we are with one of the backing officers who's arrived.
Just crashed into the Walmart! What, in the car! In the car! What car? The SUV! In the SUV! Get down on the ground! Get down on the fucking ground! He's on top of me! Watch crossfire! Watch crossfire! You good, Ryan? Come here, brother. Here, brother. Let's go. Let's go.
Ryan, where you shot?
Where you shot?
Tell me. Emergency traffic only.
Set him down, set him down.
921. Shots fired. Several shots fired. We got the guy. We're going to reach this.
Where are you shot? I don't know.
We got an officer. Sit down. See if he's been hit. Everybody expedite. Go.
Where are you at?
Get the blue out, kid. Keep going, man. Keep going, man. Don't even bother. Leave him how he is.
I need the location.
Pendle. McDonald.
Alright, so let's pause here and let's go back.
There's it!
So he parks here, gets out, and proceeds on foot. Why he ended up parking here, I don't know exactly why. It could be that he thought that it was safer to park there and approach on foot versus pull right up in the car and then be potentially stuck in the car when he's taking rounds. If that's what his mindset is, then I'm okay with that mindset. Because that's one thing I've actually complained about before, is people pulling up right up to the scene, like trying to like pull up right next to the person so you open your door and you reach out and touch them. I don't think that's a good tactic at all. I think that's putting people at risk, putting yourself at risk. If they start, as soon as you pull up and you're right there and they start shooting, they can start plugging rounds into that car, and if your car is parked, you're stuck. Like, you're stuck in a bullet magnet. That's the last place you want to be, is in a car taking rounds, because cars do not stop bullets very well at all. So if this officer was thinking from the mindset of, I'm going to stop a distance away and then get out, then I'm okay with that. I like that tactic. But for whatever reason, he stopped right here and then is proceeding the rest of the way on foot. See the cruiser peeling out.
Just crashed into the Walmart.
Now at this point, we can't see very clearly in the camera what he can see. The human eye is always going to see things a lot different, a lot better than the camera. So he could probably see the suspect in through the windshield and the crack of this door, and possibly in through the side window here, and see them with enough clarity that he knew that when he fired, he's not going to hit the good guy in there. He may not even know at this point for sure if the good guy's in there or not. I don't know. But he starts firing at the bad guy from where he's at. When he does get up there, the bad guy is kind of in a all-four position, kind of like hunched over. So even from this angle, the officer may have been thinking that this guy was going for the rifle that's in the vehicle. And I have no idea if the rifle's actually in the cab of the vehicle or not. If it is, that could be one thing this guy was thinking. It's like, oh shit, he's trying to get that rifle out. And starts plugging rounds at him from where he's at right here.
What, in the car! In the car! What car? The SUV! In the SUV! Get down on the ground! Get down on the fucking ground!
So you see how he's kind of positioned right here? So if he could see him out this way, it could give the impression that this guy was going for the rifle inside the vehicle. Or, if that wasn't the case, he's on top of this officer. It could be articulated that he feared that this guy was still going for this officer's gun, or he was choking the officer to death, strangling him, stabbing him, potentially, you know, the movement's going on, don't know. I'd say he was justified in using deadly physical force in that moment.
Watch crossfire! Watch crossfire! You good, Ryan?
So he pulls him out.
Watch crossfire! Watch crossfire! Crossfire! Watch crossfire! Watch crossfire! Watch crossfire!
And then boom, pops his ass 3 more times. I have no problem with this. None whatsoever.
You good, Ryan? Come here, brother. Come on, let's go. Come on, where you shot? Where you shot? Tell me.
Emergency traffic only.
Set him down.
921. Several shots fired. We got the guy. Where are you shot? We got an officer. Sit down. See if he's been hit. Everybody expedite. Go.
Where are you at?
Get the blowout kit. He gone, man. Don't even bother. Leave him how he is.
Listen to him talking in the background.
He gone, man. Don't even bother. Leave him how he is.
Leave him how he is. 100%. I agree with that too. All focus, all attention needs to be put on this officer right here. He is potentially injured. All first aid equipment goes to him first. He is the good guy. He is the one who needs to survive this encounter. The other guy, fuck him. He can wait for EMS to get there.
I need the location.
Pendle! McDonald.
Where are you hit, bro? Do you have any idea? I don't know. Get his belt off.
This guy, he's right here. Don't worry about him. Don't worry about him. He's dead.
Figure that out right
Make sure he's good to go.
Hey, cut his pants off. That constantly cut his pants off.
Now it's become officer now.
Is he hit anywhere?
They're checking.
The victim officer was treated and released at a nearby hospital for injuries he sustained from the abduction and assault. Brandon Lamagne, 38, of Newport News, was declared deceased at the scene. The U-Haul was...
Okay, so they don't provide that 1/3 footage from one of the support officers where they go into this split screen thing. So we'll have to go to the split screen thing here in a second and get to the point where we can see a little bit more of the backup officer. So obviously, disregard the top part right here. Alright, so this is the footage here in the bottom right that we just watched. So disregard that. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, no.
Hey, Chris! Hurry up, Chris! Chris, where we at? In the car! In the car!
Okay, so they actually do some splitting in that second video. It was actually a mix between this guy and this guy. It was so well split that it's hard to tell for sure that they're switching people. So the bottom left, you can tell by his bracelet, bottom left is the officer who goes up and rips the guy out the car. Let's continue paying attention to bottom right.
What car? The SUV! In the SUV! Get down on the ground! Get down on the fucking ground! Watch crossfire! Watch crossfire! Crossfire! Watch crossfire! Crossfire! Watch crossfire! You good, Ryan? Come here, brother. Watch crossfire! Watch crossfire! Watch crossfire! Watch crossfire! Watch crossfire! Watch crossfire!
Fucking just pow, pow, pow. Again, I have no problem with that whatsoever. This dude was a deadly physical threat. He tried to kill this officer. He's pulled him out. I have no problem with that.
Watch crossfire! Watch crossfire!
And if you look, this guy, when he lands on the ground, his arm goes towards this officer's his ankle, his leg area. So
Watch crossfire! Watch crossfire!
that he hit the officer's ankle gun, and the officer perceived that as this guy's trying to go for his gun, and decided to use deadly physical force. It's also likely that we just can't see and experience what this officer can see and experience, and he could see and experience enough to feel that this dude's still a deadly physical threat and is trying to harm him. It's also plausible that he's thinking from the mindset of there's an injured officer in this car, shots been fired, this officer could be shot if we dick around wrestling with this dude, trying to fight him into a pair of handcuffs, and it takes 3-4 officers to do that. That's going to take a while, and the longer it takes to put this person into custody, the longer this injured officer has to bleed out. And a person can bleed out very quickly. Very quickly, a person can bleed to death. So it's even possible this officer is thinking, I'm going to end this fucking shit right here, right now, and we're going to tend to this injured officer immediately and not have to worry about this dude trying to fight him in the cuffs anymore. And I'm okay with that decision too.
crossfire! Watch crossfire! Watch crossfire! Watch crossfire!
He said, bam, 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 fuck you. Love it. All right, so let's go back into the video. We'll start where we left off at, talking about this guy and the truck.
U-Haul was confirmed to be stolen from the...
So, up until this point, as far as mindset, tactics, and skills go, and gear, touched on all those things. There may be some more information from this news release that we can talk about. I have not seen this yet. So, again, when we come across something, I'm just going to pause it and then talk from there.
The city of Richmond.
Good afternoon. I often say that these body-worn camera videos speak for themselves. I believe this is one of those instances. You probably picked up that our officer was attacked, to say the least. The perpetrator attempted viciously and violently to disarm our uniformed Fairfax County police officer, and I think you saw that rather clearly. On top of that, he was literally abducted and taken hostage in his own marked police car. You saw that as well. The responding police officers, and it's tough to watch the three body-worn cameras playing simultaneously, but you'll get copies of this to review later as well. But playing that compilation simultaneously, I think, gives the viewer the perspective that all this is happening very quickly, it's happening very violently, and it's happening all at once. So that's why we played the three simultaneous, and then we broke it down body camera by body camera by body camera. You probably also picked up that, or you may not have, our holsters that, and I have one on right now, that carry our firearm have a double retention feature. I'm not going to describe that double retention feature because I don't want that to be public knowledge. But thankfully, we've had this double retention feature holster for several years, because one of the two retention mechanisms was defeated. It was the second retention mechanism that ultimately contributed to this officer living to fight another day, because I firmly believe that the perpetrator, the assailant in this case, if he were to have lodged that gun free from the officer's holster, would have killed him, would have executed him.
So that's what I talked about with the holster and its quality design and everything. And he's right. I don't think it's a great idea to be describing how these holsters work, how to defeat them, etc. And I'm not even going to go into talking a whole lot about how the holsters work either. But I think that he said a little too much to begin with, as it was, saying a double retention. I think just leave it at it is a retention holster that has security features built into it that prevent an unauthorized person. Well, I wouldn't say fully prevent, but it helps to stop an unauthorized person from removing the gun from the holster. And I think something like that, just leave it at that. We start talking about how many features are built into it, 1, 2, etc. That kind of gives people who watch these things an idea about, hey, this is how this thing works.
There's no doubt in my mind. This will be handled like all officer-involved shootings with 2 simultaneous investigations. A major crimes investigation will take a deep dive and investigate the criminal aspects of the incident, and our Internal Affairs Bureau will investigate it administratively for compliance issues. So I probably have a whole lot more to say, but I think I'll just take some questions and maybe we'll get into it that way. Julie?
Chief, I think when a lot of people watch this, I mean, some of what you say is very, very clear. I think people will wonder about is the officer that first fired his weapon from such a distance in such a busy place. So first, just your thoughts about that. And then secondly, is it known which gunfire killed the suspect?
So I'll take those one at a time. You know, we don't get to pick and choose sterile environments often when we're involved in these critical incidents. And certainly that's a stretch of Richmond Highway. It's a gas station right next to a McDonald's, a fast food restaurant. There's cars, there's people. There certainly could have been, there weren't, and thankfully there weren't. There could have been pedestrians either coming or going into the McDonald's. They were inside, thankfully. Their cars were parked and unoccupied outside. So certainly that runs through our minds, and it runs through the minds of the officers in real time when they're dealing with a potentially real deadly threat. And that assault that went mobile, that kidnapping, that abduction that went mobile, happened in real time in a small amount of space. So our officers are trained like police officers across the country to consider their background, to consider the presence of others who could be in harm's way. But oftentimes, in spite of those best efforts, there is some inevitable potential that other people could be harmed. And I put that squarely on the perpetrator. He chose to do this. He responded to his actions. His actions, in my opinion, his intent, rather, was to kill that police officer. So, but certainly that's a consideration. And anytime we have a critical incident, there will be training conversations that result. There are certainly some parts of this critical incident that we will continue to examine and will be part of our training curriculum going forward, either to enhance or to alter. But that's all part of our review while the investigation is going on at the same time. Matt.
We had the first round of gunshots from that officer, but then the second one, when the officer pulled him away from the cruiser and then you heard more gunshots. Was Brandon already dead at that point?
I don't know. So as you know, I think, Julie, if I didn't answer this part of your question, and Matt, I'll try to answer it. The perpetrator was struck several times. I don't know if we know right now. We may, as the investigation moves forward, which round or rounds proved to be the fatal rounds, and from which firearm they came from. Obviously, 2 uniformed Fairfax County police officers their firearms. So we may be at a point in the future to know that. It happened so quickly. You see the second officer, and the word I used at the scene was bravery or hero. I think I used the word hero. I mean, you see that second officer who is running literally. You know, you hear the phrase routinely about first responders, cops, firefighters running towards gunfire. He was running towards gunfire, literally. And you can see how he did that. So when he exposed himself, and he didn't know, and I imagine as our investigation will continue to reveal, you know, to the extent that either officer or both officer even knew that our own police officer was still in the car, that's all part of our investigation. Did they think it was just the perpetrator? Did they think the officer was still in the car? That's something we're going to ask as the investigation moves forward. But certainly this was a violent crime in progress. And the officers who responded did so quickly. Thank God that they were so close and they were able to respond so quickly. And thankfully, you might pick up on this, our officer had his microphone attached to his upper vest, as opposed to when I came on, you had to pull your microphone out of your holster and put your thumb on it. So I think the fact that his microphone was so readily available on his outer vest carry, he was able to transmit that someone was taking his gun. And I think he said, at least to the perpetrator 6 times, "Get off my gun, get off my gun, get off my gun."
So that is a really, really great point that he brought up. And that's actually something that I'll complain about in some videos is, especially when it comes to like the LAPD and the NYPD videos, it's like they don't believe in using lapel mics or anything. And that's one of my general complaints. Is a lapel mic is basically a piece of life safety equipment. It is a necessary piece of life safety equipment. It allows you to communicate more effectively, more efficiently. When you have just the radio mounted to your belt somewhere, it can be difficult to transmit when it's on your belt. Yeah, you can reach, well, depending on the holster for it and how it's mounted on there, you could be able to reach down and press the push-to-talk button and just yell really loudly, and people could hear you. Most certainly, you reach down and press the top and hit the orange button. But if it's in an enclosed case type of design, it may be difficult to put your finger down in there and talk into it. So that and the microphone is down to your belt. Yeah, you can yell loudly, and people will still be able to pick out what's kind of being said and everything. But when you have that lapel mic up on your shoulder or up on your vest, it's close enough to your mouth to where you can just talk at a normal tone, normal volume, and they're still going to be able to hear what's going on. Now, one thing about lapel mics that people will complain about is they can be knocked off easily. And yes, that is true. The clip that's on the back of the lapel mic, it's very small. When you clip it to your shoulder epaulette or in between the buttons of your uniform shirt, it's just a small clip, and it's just basically holding that thing on there by tension, like a clothespin kind of thing. You can very easily knock it off. Running can make it, just a vibration of it jerking around on itself can make it fall off. There's some products out there that help mitigate this. One of them is a company called Mic Loop. Highly recommend them. They make a pretty good product. Or you can make your own. All you need is paracord, or you can even use shock cord, and you can make your own microphone retention device to keep that thing on you, so that when it gets knocked loose, it doesn't go falling and dangling around to your knees and ankle. It stays exactly where it's at. All right, moving on.
And I believe he made at least 3 radio transmissions to the effect of, he has my gun, he has my gun, he has my gun. And by he has my gun, clearly, and again, facts, not opinion, the perpetrator has both hands and one hand on that gun most of the time. And thankfully, the retention feature prevented that gun from coming out of the holster. And the officer, who's about a 3-year veteran, stayed on his feet. So I think that's consistent with his training. He made a radio transmission in real time under a great amount of stress, and other officers were able to get there and save his life. Yeah, Jay.
Chief, things happened so quickly. The initial officer who fired from a little far away that Julie had referred to, was that number 2 based on the camera, and then the one who pulled the perpetrator out of the vehicle and shot him on the ground, was that the same officer?
Different officers. The one who fired from a greater distance was the first officer who was on the scene. And I know it's tough to watch it all happening at once, and you'll rewatch it, I'm sure, a couple times, and it'll slow down for you. But the second officer who came, who's a 24-year veteran, he's actually been assigned to the Mount Vernon district his entire career in a patrol capacity. He's a legendary Mount Vernon police officer. He was the second officer who responded, and he's the one who approached the car, and he's the one who pulled the perpetrator off of our police officer.
If I may do a follow-up.
Sure.
Obviously, it's hard to watch. Do you have any concerns about him pulling that person off and on the ground shooting and killing him?
Yeah, so the investigation that Major Crimes and Internal Affairs is conducting will look for adherence to laws and adherence to use of force policies. This all happened very quickly and in real time. And I think we froze a bit of the video clip and actually circled the left rear tire of the marked police car, the SUV marked police car. That left rear tire, and you can also hear the engine revving, and you can hear the engine revving because our perpetrator is stepping on that gas pedal. He's not done. So any notion that when that vehicle came to rest in the McDonald's parking lot, it was over, it wasn't over. It was still very much a very active scene. So The investigation will examine the actions of the police officers. Ultimately, we'll share all of our findings in real time with the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office, but a lot of those questions will be subject to the investigation.
So at this point, you're not willing to I mean, even though you, I would assume, believe that the shooting was justified, or is that something that you're willing to say at this point?
Yeah, so here's the 2023 version of being a police chief. We're committed. Certainly, our agency is committed to sharing critical video like this in real time. I let the video speak for itself, and there's an expectation from the local media and the community for me to make some type of assessment. And certainly, I don't shy away from those types of assessments. But my assessment in this particular case was this is a once in a generation happening to a police department, even a big police department like Fairfax, big and busy. This doesn't happen but once a generation for a police officer to be the subject of someone attacking him, trying to pull his own gun out of his holster. So, and it was very much in progress. He was assaulted, he was taken hostage.
Another great point that I often bring up in videos when I talk about officer-involved shootings and the rate at which they occur, and how at the local level it's just not happening every single day. When you think about your local agency, when was the last time they were involved in a gunfight? And if it was recent, try to think before that. Like, when was the last time they were ever involved in a shooting? There are a few agencies out there in this nation that, yeah, they do have a higher tempo when it comes to officer-involved shootings. And that's just because they have such a higher population base. And with that, there's also the fact that these larger cities, these larger places, there's a lot more like liberal leanings with policies and stuff like that with the legal system, and how the criminals are coddled and pandered and released way too early. And you also, it's just pure, like, it's numbers. Like, when you have population of 5,000 and a population of 100,000, you're going to have more instances of, you know, people with huge mental health problems in the 100,000 population versus the 5,000 population. You're going to have more gang activity, more, you know, serious criminals in this higher population number than you will the lower population number. I'm not saying the lower population number will never have those things. It's just the occurrence rate is going to be much higher with a larger population. But even then, as he noted, this is, for many places, even some big places, it just doesn't happen a lot. Moving on.
He was abducted. The actions of the two responding officers, I believe, were more than appropriate given what we know then and now. The investigation still has to move forward. We still have to ask questions that we need answers to. And some of those are forensic questions with forensic answers. So the investigation is not complete. The investigation's ongoing, but these officers, and I think, believe what you're seeing there. These officers ran toward gunfire, and their only intent was to save the life of that police officer who was screaming for help. Olivia.
Regarding after shots were fired, I believe you hear, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you hear them say, "Don't bother doing life-saving measures." Is that typical, or what's kind of the procedure guidance?
So I think, and again, I don't want to go frame by frame, there was a real concern that our victim police officer, the one who was abducted and assaulted, there was a real concern or belief, at least a concern, but certainly probably a belief at the moment that he had been shot. So I don't think I'm going out on a limb saying you've probably rarely seen body-worn camera footage of a police officer getting all of his clothes cut off of him at a scene, because they're looking for bullet holes. And the officer himself doesn't even know if he's shot. You see blood. So I think what the police officers were trying to do at the scene was to render aid to their fellow police officer. Now, that is certainly something we never expect to be done at the expense of anyone else. But all the actions, behaviors, decisions that the police officers made at the scene will be thoroughly reviewed. But I think based on what we see on that video is there's a real belief, minimally a thought, that our own police officer had been shot. And that's not just based on his radio transmissions. That's based on the fact that when our 24-year veteran police officer went and pulled the perpetrator off of our police officer, you think the worst. And I think all the circumstances surrounding that, a reasonable police officer would think that their fellow police officers was either hurt or killed. Julie, do you have something then?
Yeah, just a follow-up on that.
Max.
Did they, we don't see it in the video, did they ever do any life-saving measures on him? I mean, I think to some people that's going to, I understand what you're saying about your officer being a big priority there. But when people see that, some of them might react to it. I think it was kind of callous. I mean, do you know if he ever was given care, or did they just think it was too late for him that he was gone?
So those are questions that we're going to ask. Was the perpetrator in this particular case obviously, or was there a observation that he was deceased and no life-saving measures were going to make a difference? I don't know. Certainly, you can't take away from the fact that several other police officers are literally retrieving their trauma kits from their cars, and they're cutting the clothing off of their fellow police officer. You see one police officer standing in the background literally with a tourniquet because he's expecting to have to apply it. So a lot is happening at once, and I understand the sensitivities involved when someone in public safety, a first responder, appears to make a decision or make a comment that's either callous or dismissive, and all those things will be addressed. But I think in this particular case, the perpetrator was deceased, and the police officers on the scene were certainly concerned about their colleague either bleeding to death from gunshot wound or wounds, and I think the video depicts that.
And just the other follow-up on that, sorry about this part.
That's right.
Is it, it's unclear from the video, is it known who put the vehicle in reverse, whether that was the suspect?
It was absolutely the perpetrator.
It was, so he got his foot on the gas, as you said.
Yeah, when you watch this again, Julie, you'll see that our police officer, our victim police officer, is wearing black shoes or boots, and his feet are hanging out of his police car after he's abducted and tossed inside of his police car and pummeled. And the perpetrator, and you can pick this up on the video as well, I believe he takes left foot, right foot, I'm not sure, and he's the one who stomps on the gas pedal after our perpetrator takes the gear selector and puts it in reverse. Max?
Chief, you touched on this briefly, but the officer who fired from a greater distance, what that officer knew about what was happening in the car. Based on what you've learned in the investigation so far, can you say whether he knew the officer was in the car, whether he knew the positioning of if the officer was toward the inside, toward the outside? What can you say about what the officer knew when he started firing?
We're eventually going to know the answers to all those very logical questions, and I think and maybe I shouldn't speculate, but a number of different things are running through the minds of both the police officers. It's not just a natural assumption that the police officer is still in the car. He could be laying dead in the parking lot of the Citgo gas station. But when the police officers see the car and it seemingly comes to rest, and they hear the engine revving, they see the tires spinning, and that car, whoever's driving it, is very much trying to still get away, the police officers approach the car one stop shorter than the other. They both make a decision to deploy deadly force, and the investigations, both the criminal and the administrative, exist to examine the thought processes, the reasoning, the justification the lawfulness, the compliance associated with the use of deadly force. We take it very, very seriously. We just don't watch a video and wash our hands of it. There's a lot of questions that still need to be asked and answered. But I don't think that in any way, shape, or form takes away from the compelling nature of this video that I assume within hours will go viral nationally. This is egregious. This is not the norm. And our police officers lucky to be alive. Jay? And then Matt.
Once they began to struggle and they got into the vehicle, based on your preliminary information in the investigation, do you have a sense as to what kind of assault this perpetrator did on the officer? Was it punching, kicking, elbowing, scratching? Do you kind of have a sense of...
Well,
it was all...
So if you see where I'm right-handed, our victim police officer's right-handed, and you'll see this in the video, his holster never moves on his gun belt, but his entire gun belt is twisted to the front of his body. So by the time our officer is still in the midst of the struggle, his holster is right here where my belt buckle is right now. So you see that clear as day in the parking lot. You see the perpetrator with two hands and then one hand. The only time I saw the perpetrator take two hands off the gun when he left one hand on the gun is when he opened the door with his left hand of the police car and abducted our police officer. And then when he shoves our police officer into the car, we believe that he's assaulting our police officer inside the car while he's looking for the gear selector and stomping on the gas pedal. Again, all those, I think, you watch this video enough times, you can probably come to that same conclusion, but there are other questions that need to be asked during the course of both our investigations. He's the one who opened up the door, the perpetrator is. The officer had both his hands on the gun for most of the time. The only time he ever took a hand off of it is to make a radio transmission with his left hand when he presses his little radio thing. Yes, sir.
Explain the protocol and policy when he first approached the perpetrator about having a stolen U-Haul, almost detained immediately as soon as he told him this U-Haul was stolen. And it seems like he was kind of questioning things. Is that kind of practice to just, I guess, immediately start wanting to handcuff the driver?
Well, the officer was alerted, and I think we included this in the audio part of this compilation. There's a camera that hit on a U-Haul, that particular U-Haul, and indicated that U-Haul was stolen. So the officer makes a secondary confirmation of that stolen vehicle hit. And then when the U-Haul pulls into the gas station parking lot, our police officer pulls in behind the U-Haul. He's obviously driving a marked police car. He's obviously in full uniform. That is a felony traffic stop. So there are numerous training scenarios associated with a stop of that nature. So when the driver or perpetrator gets out of his U-Haul and appears to be going toward the inside of the gas station, our officer approached him, not at gunpoint, but approached him, asked him to, I don't even think he even had to ask him to stop, but he approached him and started to engage him in conversation. He walked him away from where they initially encountered each other back toward the car, and they continued the conversation. And our police officer very appropriately said to him, and consistent with his training, that I'm going to detain you temporarily with these handcuffs. I'm not sure the exact words that he used, but a temporary detention of someone who's driving a stolen vehicle with handcuffs until backup got there and further investigation occurred is not inconsistent with our training here in Fairfax County, nor is it inconsistent with any training that I've ever been familiar with in my career.
You can clearly see the officer's face. Forgive me, has he been ID'd?
Yes, we've placed, I think last weekend, we have a 10-day name release policy. So if you don't have those handy, we can get those to you right afterwards. The three officers, our victim officer is about a 3-year veteran. The first officer who discharged is a 8-year veteran. And the officer who was closer to the car, who opened up the car door, is a 24-year veteran.
Thank you.
Olivia.
Are the two officers who fired shots still on restricted duty status?
Yes.
Is there any history of other OISs or excessive?
The answer, they're on restricted duty status, which is the norm. And there are no other officer-involved shootings, and no internal affairs significant history whatsoever.
To be clear, he was not shot, and how is this officer doing that?
Well, it's quite a traumatic thing to go through. He was assaulted. He was taken hostage inside of his own car. He probably at one point in time thought he was shot. If you watch this video again, he didn't know if he was shot or not. So we have peer support resources on the police department. We have a wellness commitment. So he is getting the appropriate interactions that he needs to get through this. But certainly not an easy thing for anyone, police officer or not, to go through a scenario like that where you're viciously assaulted and abducted in your own vehicle. It's traumatic. There's no doubt about it. Yes, ma'am.
In a unique situation in such a public space, you said your ideal is to just make sure your officer is safe and you get him out of their life. What do you consider in terms of all the other people in the area? And I only ask because we spoke to a young couple that was in a drive-through of McDonald's, and they said they were so afraid for their lives, and I understand it's such a unique situation.
Yeah. Our concern is not singularly or solely for our police officers, and I hope I didn't project that or portray that. Our concern is for everyone. So when this man makes a decision to do what he did, he does it in an environment that's filled with cars and people and businesses, and that's where this happened. Certainly, we train. We are aware that any police actions that we take, particularly use of force actions and deadly force actions, in an environment that's as crowded as this one, can have other dire ramifications. That's all part of the conversation, the investigation. It will absolutely inform our training now and going forward. So all those circumstances, the condition of not only our police officer, the condition of the perpetrator, the assailant, everyone matters in a circumstance or an incident like this, to include people who are either in the drive-thru at the McDonald's, or you probably saw the two folks in the red van. Everyone is in harm's way. And then I think the question we have to ask ourselves is, why are we in harm's way? Who put us in harm's way? And typically it's the actions of a person like this one who chose to do what he did. Yes, ma'am.
Specifically concerning training, are you all going to look at or review your homework?
So we have a performance review board. It's relatively new. It's a year or so old here. The performance review board does not investigate criminally or administratively the circumstances of this incident, but they look specifically at training enhancement possibilities. They look at equipment upgrades that need to occur. They look at police vehicles. They look at everything associated with that critical incident that can be improved now and not after an investigation concludes. So having something like a performance review board that's staffed by the executive deputy police chief and others gives us an opportunity, if we need to make training changes or enhancements or adjustments now, we don't wait until the investigation concludes. So the performance review board is something we're very committed to, and we think it makes us better. We've had it for well over a year now, and each and every time the performance review board has convened, they come away with recommendations that we immediately implement. Yes, sir.
Chief,
Max.
Through conversations with other police agencies, have you determined that this individual was the one who stole that U-Haul out of Richmond, or was he simply just driving a U-Haul that was stolen by another person?
So from what I understand, Max, he rented this U-Haul under a fraudulent or fictitious identification and then never returned the U-Haul. And then the U-Haul down south, I'm not sure which jurisdiction off the top of my head right now, then reported that vehicle stolen. So we believe that he is the same person. Olivia.
You could be in mind.
Yeah, I saw you.
So no one, has a crystal ball and could foresee something like this happening. Is there anything that you're thinking about in terms of training or moving forward that could leave officers or make them less vulnerable to something like this? I don't know if there's an answer to that.
Yeah, it's tough. So, again, our police officer, I don't want to take away from his own bravery, our victim police officer, because he stayed on his feet. He made radio transmissions in the heat of a very violent moment where he was being attacked and someone was trying to take his gun. He was able to stay on his feet, make radio transmissions, and call for help. So he did a great job. But ultimately, it's our commitment several years ago, and I think it was 8 or so years ago, where we purchased these double retention holsters. And sometimes when police departments are introduced to new equipment, there's some hesitations. Because would a double retention holster make it longer for you to access your firearm when you really need it? They don't. With proper training, a double retention holster does not slow down the speed or the haste that's required to withdraw your firearm under the appropriate circumstances. So, I think the FCPD, like other police departments, has recognized the need for double retention holsters, the need for equipment that keeps particularly our lethal tools less accessible to people who want to take them from us and do us harm. So that's all part of the performance review board too. We've certainly made a commitment, even recently within the last year or so, to purchase BolaWrap. BolaWrap is the brand name of a less lethal device. We're always looking for that next generation of technology, whether it's less lethal or whether it's equipment or retention features associated with our lethal weapons to purchase and adopt. We're always looking to be an early adopter. And I think the fact that we were an early adopter with double retention holsters 8 years ago paid off 2 weeks ago.
Chief,
yes, sir.
I'll quickly follow up. I'm so sorry in advance for my English. In the first video, in the first interaction between the police and the perpetrator, we saw the man is talking with the driver of a unit, red car in the gas station. Do you know if they knew each other?
We don't believe that our perpetrator interacted with anyone in that red van. He was walking by the front of that red van. We think he was on his way to open up the door to go into the convenient store, the Citgo convenience store. We do not believe that our perpetrator knew. I think there was a driver and a passenger in that red van, and we blurred their faces and their tag because they're arguably irrelevant, and we're not identifying people who aren't pertinent to the incident. So but we do not believe they knew each other at all. Jay.
Chief, do you know where he was heading by chance? Was he getting gas and going back to Richmond to return the U-Haul, or do you have?
I don't know. We executed a search warrant because we were interested in the content of the U-Haul, and we found clothing and assorted items. We also found identifications that did not belong to him. Certainly we do know that he rented that U-Haul under a fictitious or fraudulent identification. So we did find some evidence of other identifications inside that U-Haul that apparently did not belong to him. So I'm not sure. I still to this day, and maybe that will change, I don't know what his particular connection was to that part of Fairfax County.
Do you know why he rented it? Was he stealing things, taking them somewhere?
I don't know. He rented it with a identification that wasn't his own, so I think it's logical to assume that he probably had an intent to deceive. But no, I don't know. He rented it under someone else's identification, failed to return it. U-Haul reported it stolen. And if you're wondering, it has no association with the U-Haul at the White House. All right. Thank you all very much.
All right. So that's it. If you like what you hear and see, go ahead and give me a like and a share. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button and stay tuned for more Monday quarterback videos. Earl Henderson, Primordial Defense. Thank you for watching.